is a UFC fight night, Erceg versus Moreno recap and reaction. I'm going to go over the results of the fights and some of the key moments. So in the main event, we had Brandon Moreno win by decision. This was not surprising. He did get the better of Erceg the majority of the fight. On top of fighting in his home country, everything was kind of just in line for Moreno to get the decision. The next fight, Manuel Torres versus Drew Dober. I was genuinely surprised that Drew Dober got put away so easily and so quickly. I thought this was going to be a competitive back and forth fight that would have extended into the later rounds. But Manuel Torres and put him down easy. I'm very annoyed with the fact that the ref took so long to stop the fight. Nobody likes to, well, unless you're a sicko, most people don't like to see a fighter get punished when he's unable to defend himself any longer. That ref needs to be penalized or fired, in my opinion. The next fight, Edgar Chairez versus CJ Vergara. I must admit, was tripping a little bit because I thought CJ Vergara was the same person as Alex Perez. Alex Perez, who knocked out Matthias Nicolau. Obviously, I know now that it's not the same person. But as far as performance-wise, Edgar Chairez, again, another fighter who put down their opponent quickly and easily. There's not much else for me to say on this fight, considering I didn't even know the opponent Chairez was fighting. I'm just surprised it was so easy. The next fight, Raul Rojas Jr. versus Vince Morales. This fight was pretty predictable. Raul Rojas Jr., as I said in one of my tweets, for me, he's one of those fighters I like to watch in the hopes that I see him lose. And it's not because any other reason other than I think his fights are, for the most part, boring. Like in this fight, he's just wrestling the entire time and holding his opponent down. And in most of these positions, he's not really trying to get off any damage. And Vince Morales almost caught him in some sneaky submissions, just as he almost did versus his last opponent. I kind of feel like his last opponent, who was coming in on his debut, had a better performance against Vince than Raul Rojas did. And I'm blanking on the name right now, but he's the son of that dude who was on the tough season. Next fight, David Martinez versus Simon Oliveira. In retrospect, I guess this was another easy fight to predict. He was the favorite for a reason. Very intense fighter. Throws his everything into his kicks and punches. Sharp, kind of like karate-like style. In his finish, he bounced out of range and then bounced back in and landed his finishing sequence. But like Raul Rojas, I feel like his opponent was handpicked for him to get him an easy victory for this particular card, fighting in his home country. Nevertheless, it was a good performance. Next fight, Kevin Borjas versus Ronaldo Rodriguez. Apparently, this Ronaldo Rodriguez guy is a pretty famous dude. I'm not sure why, and that's a genuine wonderment. Someone can explain in the comments. If not, I'll look it up myself. But I was surprised by the performance of Kevin Borjas. He completely dominated Ronaldo, dropping him several times, rocking him several times, having the control the entire fight on the feet. Ronaldo was throwing spinning shit, as Nate Diaz would call it, and a lot of wheel kicks. I think, what's his name? The welterweight champ. He put out a tweet that said something like, "Why is this guy spinning and stuff?" It's pretty comical. But domination by Kevin Borjas. And I also have to mention, it was kind of cringe-worthy to see Ronaldo holding up the Monster Energy can, holding his hands up like if he was going to get the decision at the end of the fight. And we know that the judges this night were pretty awful and robbed some people pretty blatantly. But even in this fight, for this quote-unquote superstar, they didn't even have the balls to rob Kevin Borjas. Next fight, we have, what's his face, Ateba versus Jose Medina. This was a domination by Ateba. Jose Medina was not able to do his usual tactic of, oh, let me stand here and tough it out. Let me be a punching bag for my opponent until they get tired, and then maybe I can start landing my own shots. This did not work at all. Ateba had too much power on top of having too much precision with his strikes and put him down pretty badly. And the ref came in. He was still in his senses when the ref stopped it, but it was a good stoppage. He was only going to get hurt if the ref let him put on the finishing blows. So this guy's the real deal. I had a hesitancy towards him because he hadn't had any UFC fights yet, only the Contender Series fight. But the guy's the real deal. He's not just, his muscles aren't just show muscles. Next fight, Melquiz Costa versus Christian Rodriguez. This was a decent competition. It was a good back and forth, but I think the fighter won the decision. I'd like to see Christian Rodriguez get paired up with another fighter who is undefeated, and let's keep the storyline with him being the O killer or the O taker. Let's keep that going and see if he can stay true to his legendary status of defeating undefeated fighters. That could be a good future for him in the organization, playing that role. And as far as Costa, he did well. I thought, honestly, he would do better than he did. I thought he would have made it look a little easier than it was. But that just goes to show that C-Rod's a good fighter. He's no joke. Next fighter, our next fight, Lupita Godinez versus Julia Palastri. Julia Palastri fights like she's too cool to be in there. And to be fair, she's not the only one who does that. There's other fighters who do that, like Brandon Moreno, but at least he backs it up. This girl is taken down pretty easily, and her ground game is not that impressive. That's something to keep in mind in the future if we see her go up against another fighter who has good takedowns and ground game. And Lupita Godinez did better than I thought she would. It was a good performance on her part. I think in the third round she was grabbing the back of Julia's shorts. She gave her a gnarly wedgie. And part of me was like, look at this chick cheating. But then another part was like, thank you. Because if you saw what I saw after that moment, you appreciated Godinez a little bit more. The next fight, we have Rafa Garcia versus Vince Pichel. I think this was the first robbery of the night that I noticed. If I'm not mistaken, Vince Pichel came in on short notice. And on top of coming in on short notice, he's 42 years old. But this dude, in my opinion, controlled the pace of the whole fight, landed the cleaner shots, stayed safe from Rafa's bursts of offense, never really landed cleanly on Vince Pichel. Vince was either getting out of the way or catching the shots on his arms or slipping the shots. And the only moment Rafa had was in the third round when he picked him up and slammed him. But other than that, and the control time he got from that, he did not capitalize on that takedown and land good ground and pound or anything. So if you want to give Rafa the third round, I get it. But even if that's the case, I don't see how you could have given the first two rounds to Rafa. Another case of, I think, the judges robbing the rightful winner and giving it to the Mexican dude. I don't have any prejudices towards Mexicans because if I'm not mistaken, I believe my 23andMe that I took a couple years ago said I'm from some region in Mexico, or at least 40% of me is. But I just like to see the fighter who won actually be given the victory when it comes down to the judges. I don't like to see these fighters get robbed. Next fight, Jamal Emmers versus Gabriel Miranda. Apart from the very start of the fight where Miranda, impressively enough, tried to sneak in a submission, pretending he was going to stand and trade with Emmers. But then he went for the takedown and submission. He almost got it. Good for him. But fortunately for him as well, Jamal Emmers was able to get the knockout. And this is what I had been hearing from people, that Emmers should be able to get the KO. So that was some good input. I believe that input came from Jacob Lyons' next fight and last fight. No, I'm sorry. So this was the first robbery of the night. It was Austin Hubbard getting robbed by the judges. Yeah, he fought Markel Medeiros and Medeiros got robbed. I'm sorry, Medeiros was gifted a decision. Austin Hubbard got robbed. He had, I believe, the control time, I think in all three rounds, but if I'm not mistaken, it was definitely the first two. He was just the better mixed martial artist and had the control time. It was pretty clear as day to me. Sorry, I'm recording this while I'm driving, and there's some prick. Anyway, yeah, this was the first robbery of the night. Right? But surprisingly, Medeiros, is he Mexican? Because on Tapology he has an American flag. But I believe Medeiros is a Hispanic last name, so I guess it's just one of those things. Mexican fighting in Mexico City. So, to recap, if you're like me and you like to make long shot parlays, I think it's best to go with the logical winner. Like in this case, Austin Hubbard won the fight. So make your parlays with the logical winners because perhaps you won't get robberies. Like last week in the UK, surprisingly, the UK fighters weren't being gifted the decisions by the UK judges. It was just one of those nights. But like the following week, the Mexican fighters this week are getting gifted decisions by the judges. So go with the logical parlays, and then also have other slips where you make some parlays for these sort of outcomes. That way, you still have some life during the fight night. You still have some life, some skin in the game as you're watching these fights. And of course, you can do it as you're watching along. You can always regather yourself and make a new parlay if your parlay busts. But you gotta have some of everything. Logical parlays, some mixed with logic and mixed with bad or biased judging robberies and such. So that's it for the recap, and hopefully next week will be better. There's another week with no studying or research on my part other than listening to a couple of other MMA YouTubers. Too busy with work, couldn't find the time to do it. But I don't think that's a big deal for this week. I'll try and get that out this week. Good luck to everybody. Hope you can win big one of these weeks. See you later.